it's got National Farms place where it's going to be made into methane stuff, and how much red diesel is used and stuff. He said it's just a big scam.
Right, getting close now.
Right. Well,
I'm gonna start my own nation and do my own thing, and I will be king. I'm gonna start my own nation. Run myself for preservation. I'm gonna start my own nation. Run myself for preservation.
Keep the red flag flying.
oh, we can hear you talking.
Are we ready to go now, Mark?
Yeah, we're ready. We're on.
Welcome everybody. Be prepared for this this lovely homely feel to the evening tonight, because we're broadcasting from the Midlands, and one of the things you'll immediately is that we can't hear the jingles and the music, so it's going to be a very case of, are we ready yet? All night. But thank you so much, Mark, for running the show tonight. We're really grateful to you. And secondly, you will have noticed, is it not very exciting indeed? We have one of the original members. We have back the amazing, the wonderful, the marvelous, and I better not big him up too much, Stuart Sutherland.
How are you doing?
Stuart, how are you?
I am. I'm coping. I'm getting there. I'm happy. It's Gala week.
Well, we can't wait to hear those pearls of wisdom that you used to drop. So mind you, you big expectations of you. Sort of, not that I want to worry you at all. Let's move straight on to moment of the week.
Got to get it.
Go. Thank you. And I'm going to start with the moment of the week. I'm going to give you my moment of the week and have a little rant. Janine, we are seeing the whole weight of the Israeli army attack a refugee camp. Refugees are having to flee from a refugee camp, and the whole weight of the Israeli army is attacking what is no more than a few dozen resistance fighters in Jenin camp, and they're taking a leaf out of Putin. They're just wrecking the place. They are stopping ambulances getting to the wounded, and they are attacking hospitals and fleeing refugees with smoke bombs. It's and tear gas. It is horrific what's going on there, and the world just sits back and could not give a shit. In fact, the US that supports the state of Israel to $4 billion a year says it's justified. It is not justified. It's ethnic cleansing of the worst kind. It's overreaction, and we're allowed under all the rules of anti-Semitism to say that the state of Israel is a pariah state in doing this. Horrific. And we need to lead an absolute reaction to this. The reaction in Britain, our wonderful politicians, the supine, servile set of rubbish, are passing a bill which will stop councils and other bodies, charities, banning buying Israeli goods, and actually supporting the actions of the government of Israel, and that needs to stop as well. The Palestinian authorities appealed to the United Nations. We are chairing the Security Council at the moment, and we need to stand up. Things need to be said to the state of Israel that the state of Israel is not used to hearing. They have gone too far. That's my moment of the week. Stuart, you're our welcome guest. What's your moment of the week?
Well, for me personally, it's been here with you guys. But before I came on, I was was scrolling through Facebook, and I saw the kind of state of politics as it is at the moment, and there was a privileges committee meeting, and Rishi Sunak was being asked the question, and he answered that he'd not read the report fully, but he had consumed some part of it, and he'd been questioned on that a couple of times. How much had he read? And it turned out the report was 3 pages long, and all he had to say was, I've not read it at all, or I have read it completely. There was no reason at all other than to make himself look stupid to say that he'd consumed part of it. And that's where we are with politics. There's no value in just being honest, is there?
I mean, the corruption and the incompetence in Parliament is horrific at the moment. I mean, is it just the Tories? I mean, or is it all political parties and politicians down there?
I think on some level, I think Westminster politics is broken. I think it's too much of a game for people. It's too much of a trying to catch each other out for sound bites, if you know what I mean. But the very basic principles of, could you say yes or no that you've read a report? And he wasn't confident enough to say that he hadn't read it. There's no value in him being Prime Minister if he isn't able to, one, either read that report, or two, be honest about it.
Or have some, for goodness sake, he has office staff. You would have thought that he would have just said, read that and tell me in 3 lines what it's all about. Winston Churchill used to demand précis, and if it went longer than a side of foolscap, he used to screw it up and throw it away. I need to know the basics, and I'm horrified with the whole Westminster setup. I agree with you, Kirsty. Mums of your week.
Can I have 2 again? Because I'm always greedy.
Providing the short ones, yes.
Right. So the short one, I've just been laughing at Farage having all his bank accounts shut down this week, has been hilarious. His Twitter posts, he's just losing his mind. And he's saying, that he's been attacked by the establishment. It turns out he didn't have enough money in the bank. There was a certain amount that he had to have in the bank because it was a posh bank account. He didn't have it in, so they've shut the account and what have you, but he's losing the mind over it. And the other one as well, I just wanted to give a bit of solidarity to an activist within the TUC who's been dogpiled this week. And it's a trans lady called, bear with me, Mika Mario Paluli, I think her name is. And she went on to ITV and was talking about excessive water bills and how expensive Thames Water was. And saying that it was a real struggle as a mum. She's got a little baby, and as a mum, she was finding it as a struggle. And unfortunately, the anti-trans movement and what have you have absolutely dogpiled this woman over the last couple of days, saying that she can't be a mum and she can't be, she cannot be a mum because she's not a woman and what have you. So I just wanted to send some solidarity to her because I think she's had a little bit of a struggle the last couple of days, and it's horrible to be dogpiled, especially on Twitter. I think it's quite savage. So yeah, a moment of the week enjoying, Farage getting his knickers in a twist about his bank and what have you, but then also that one, I think we could just be a little bit more kinder in life.
Thank you very much. Really important. I'm getting, it's lovely when listeners tell me their moments of the week. Jacqueline's got a very personal one, seeing her grandson bum shuffling across the floor.
We love
Jacqueline.
Jackie.
It begins. You'll spend the next 2 years chasing the beggar. Jacqueline says ruthlessness and kowtowing to the establishment is the name of the game in Westminster. Agreeing with you, Stuart. Well done. Mark, moment of your week.
I'm going to try and do 2 quick ones. if that's allowed. First one, it's the thing I always want to do as my moment of the week when it comes round, and that's Chainmakers. Obviously, the Chainmakers Festival of Cradley Heath. Notice Cradley, not Cradley, as somebody said once on here, and the Old Hill. Basically, it's a really good thing. You've got to think, going back to what it wasn't a male strike. It was women. Women once they'd sent the men off to work to make the big chains that were like on the Titanic and stuff, were making smaller chains at home, and they were getting screwed for what they were doing. That was with the baby, full foundry, and they were just not getting that much money for it. And basically, in the I'm getting messages from Jane as well. In the baby there, the foundry and everything like that, and they were making chains.
She wasn't the other one.
Hang on, we've got somebody shouting in the background.
You're echoing, Mark.
I know somebody was shouting in the background as well. Okay, I'll try and work that out as I can. Hopefully that'll sort it out. How's that? Hopefully that'll work. Anyway, so there was that, and we celebrate the Chainmaker strike, where they got the first minimum wage, and the second one, bit of sad news, is Myra Black is not going to stand for Parliament next election. She's just announced it, unfortunately, and so they're basically somebody who spoke truth to power, and it's very. Hopefully Jerry Corbyn and whatever he's planning, but we don't know about yet. We'll have to wait and see. But solidarity also within the 11. Basically, you said you did. I didn't see the interview. I saw a bit of it on Twitter as I was having to do all the amazing stuff with my mum, trying to get around the shops after work. And it was just, I thought it was good to mention it. Mm-hmm.
Motives, nobody gives a damn about principles. They're all just playing games, and she can't stand it any longer. So we're getting somebody in the back. There's is it a television or somebody shouting?
No, hang on. I know what it'll be. One sec.
Right. Okay.
I think she's
and let's move to the jingle for the
Nice one. Yeah.
Let's move to the jingle for the big story.
Now it's time for the big story.
Big story. Thank you very much. And the big story today is climate. And one of my main things, as you know, one of my main issues. And the story is that the government's missing its climate targets. Mark, you're kicking off on that. Tell us about what's happening, about missing climate targets, and then why? Why are we missing our climate targets?
Oh, I wish I hadn't looked at the why, but obviously we are. The Climate Change Committee have told us we're not hitting them at the moment. We're just not doing enough to actually just have to. There we are. We're not doing enough to actually stop it, and we're not going to hit the targets by 2030, wasn't it? They said, if I remember reading the Guardian article correct. And there's people are making us think of that, aren't they? One's even resigned, I believe.
Do you think that Zach Goldsmith, do you think that was about climate, or was it just because he was going to get into trouble for supporting Boris?
I think it was because he was about supporting Boris. As we know, that obviously the Privileges Committee released that thing with the number of them that were criticising them, which is completely correct. they shouldn't. You can't really criticise the Privilege Committee without expecting them to clap back, and hopefully they will. I think it's Monday, isn't it? There's going to be a debate in Parliament, if I remember correctly.
Just a little aside there. This is nothing to do with climate, people. I'm so sorry, but I just wanted to just sort of we criticise the Privileges Committee. No, what gives the Privileges Committee? I'm sure that they were very careful about their judgment, and I'm sure it was absolutely fair. But why are you not allowed to say, well, I think they got it wrong? I've never seen such a miscarriage of justice in my life. I mean, you can do it about the highest court on the land. And very often you turn out to be right in the end, and they did get it wrong. What is it about the Privileges Committee that you're not allowed to say what a load of rubbish? Human right in our country.
I think you have to do it with respect. Don't you? You have to respect what they are saying. To call something a kangaroo court is a little bit much, I think. If I'm honest, I think you have to do it with some respect to actually with what they're doing there. Yeah.
I mean, it's sort of. I know I'm supporting people like Rees-Mogg and things like that when I say it, but I've never heard anything like it. It's like the bloody Labour Party. You're not allowed to talk about that. You're not allowed to say that. Oh, we mustn't criticise that. Just be quiet. That's the word. Sort of, what kind of a country we become? Anyway, carry on. What are your opinions, Mark, about why we're failing to meet our targets? What's your judgment on the cause of our dreadful failure?
We're just not putting enough money into the actual what we need to do, and I hear that we're actually going to cut back on what we're going to need on the money we're going to give to other countries as well, aren't we? Now we were saying in the chat earlier, you sent that email through partly because of and you know, we've got to think that we built our industrial economy all on using industrial, greenhouse gases and what have you. So we really should be helping the other nations. Otherwise, how can we criticise them for trying to build their economy by using those systems?
Well, I mean, the idea is that we give them some money, in compensation. Is it just money? Do you think there's a diminution of political will or anything? I'm going to be talking about Stuart later on.
Yeah, I think there is because there is a lot of right-wing people who think, well, probably this is not going to hit me while I'm still alive, so it's not going to hit me. So let's just I want to drive my precious little brum, shall we say, if you know what I mean.
Kirsty, I mean, the Guardian's saying that the Labour Party is as bad as the Tories on this. That the Labour Party is backpedaling on its promises. I mean, is this true?
Well, yeah, by the looks of it, just going by media and what have you, that both sides of the political sphere are saying they're not going to put the money into it. You know, it seems as if both political parties get on the bandwagon with this and promise that they're going to put money into green energy, into climate change. And we're talking billions of pounds that, the figures they're knocking around, it's billions of pounds to actually get to where we need to be, where we're a greener planet. But from Labour's point of view, it looks as if, they get a large donation off one of the biggest green energy firms that are out there, is one of their donators. So that'll be interesting to follow of what they're going to do with that, if they're not going to commit the money towards, better climate change, but are happy to take money from donors that obviously they're donating that money to get that policy in there. Where is that going to lead the Labour Party as far as, they could possibly be losing out on donors with this one as well. But by the looks of it, they're doing exactly the same as what the Tories are, of promising on pledges just to get the support. And I think what we might see is just more promises on the run up to the general election in a couple of years, really, that it'll come back into that there'll be money to spend on this. But I think it's really, some of the reporting that's out there and some of the excuses the establishment give So in one article, they were saying, well, if we've got to pay out this amount of money for, you know, a greener world and what have you, that means that we're going to have to cut back on things like global violence against women and girls and such like. You know, it's this whole, well, we can't have one with a, why can't we have all of it? You know, there's plenty of money kicking around out there for us to be able to sort out so many of, you know, the world's issues and what have you. But from reading between the lines, I think Starmer's just done his usual and U-turned again, where he's promised a lot and he's not going to deliver much.
I think the Labour Party's point is that we approve of it and we're going to do it, but we're not going to spend any money on it. And if, if Mark is right, that sort of the failure to deliver is an issue of money, well, that's very, very worrying indeed. Mark, just before I move on to Stuart, complaints about the fact that the sound is very low.
I've just been pushing it up a little to see if that helps it, because I don't want it to go too high, because otherwise it distorts. Sorry, I got it a bit lower than normal.
Right. Okay. Jacqueline, if it continues quiet, just let us know on the chat. Stuart, final question to you on climate change. The sort of the Guardian suggests that the reason for this is that it's a failure of political leadership. What I worry is that it's basically that the two leaders have realised that climate's dropping down the list of public priorities, especially amongst their target voters, and so it's basically they're feeling free to drop it their agenda. What is this basically? People losing interest in climate, or are there other factors?
For me, I mean, it's not just a failure of leadership. It is, you know, it's part of the problem of a first past the post electoral system that will give, you know, secure majorities when people are elected, but it doesn't give real opportunity for long-term planning. Everybody's chasing that election window, and they're quite happy to jettison promises. That's an issue with our electoral system, and we need to resolve that. We know why the targets are being missed, and I think it's as much of a political choice, fixing things in people's lives, that, you know, the installation homes, the you know, solar panels, the things in the community, the improvements to transport that would see a reduction in emissions. Those haven't come about because those are, you know,
I think we've lost Stuart.
I think we have, actually.
I am so sorry, everybody. Last week we had to cancel because of technical issues. Today we're obviously beset by technical issues. It must be very frustrating for you. Jacqueline Hemmings, does Starmer not know how the Bank of England works? No. Or chooses to ignore it. That's basically the thing. Laura Lee, did I read somewhere that one country is massively ahead in their plan towards carbon emissions? It's doable if you care and invest. Which country is that, Laura? I have a suspicion it might be China, which would be a disaster, because what China argues is that their model of semi-autocracy gets things done in a way that the West's model of democracy does not. And sort of, you've got to admit that they've got something to that. Right. Well, everybody, let's take stock. We've got background noises still from somewhere. We've got we've lost Stuart altogether, I'm now going to move on to the other stories a lot earlier than we intended to do so, but I suspect we may have hear something that'll be interesting this time. The second story of the night, people, is supermarkets, and they've been in the news recently because of the high prices. Food, particularly, is fueling most of the high inflation that we're experiencing as a country. And the question is, and the politicians have leapt on this bandwagon, is this greedflation? Is this supermarkets benefiting from our discomfiture? Kirsty, is greedflation real? Should we blame the big supermarkets?
Yes. So we could say, there's many arguments to it. A lot of people have used, well, it's problems, war in Ukraine, Russia, Brexit, all these problems. But if that were the problem, we'd see that through the whole food chain from where we're bringing diesel in abroad, through to our farmers, through to them getting it to the supermarkets. I lived in a small village for a lot of years and I got quite close to the farming community, got to know them on a personal level. So I had to chat with one of my old mates who I always go to when it comes to farming questions because he's got a lot to say about it. He's well versed. And I just asked him and I said, are farmers making a larger profit? We're seeing that the prices are going up in our supermarket. This must mean, those who grow our food must be getting paid more. And his answer was absolutely not when he finished laughing at me. And the rundown is, the cost of farming is going up. So the prices of their tractors are going up, the prices of their trailers. Some of them are like £500,000, £1 million just for one piece of machinery. He compared it to sort of 1950s, if you were paying sort of £90 for a ton, I think it was a ton of wheat. Now they're getting paid £96 for a ton of wheat. So there's only been an increase of £6 there for the farmers since 1950s. So if we look at that comparably, where is this extra money that we are paying for in the supermarkets going? Because it's obviously not going to our farmers, is it? So I think we can rule out the fact that we've got greedy farmers that are somehow, hiking up food prices, even if they were doing it in relation to how much they're having to pay for their feed, their fertilizer. The cost of all that is going up and up and up. But these farmers aren't able to pass that over to the supermarket. So locally, we had egg farmers who refused to ship the eggs out because the price of their feed's gone up, which means it's costing them more to produce the eggs. But the supermarkets won't pay the extra to the farmer to cover all that. So why are our prices for eggs going up in the shop then? Because the farmers aren't getting paid for that, are they? So I think we can rule that one out. And it's got to be down. Sorry, my cat. It's got to be down to greedy profiteering. And I think we can see that. There's so many scams going around at the moment where the big four? It's like Tesco's, Morrison's, Sainsbury's and Aldi. Is it Waitrose? Yeah, Waitrose. Well, they don't class Aldi and Lidl as the big four, do they? Because they're the sort of cheap and right. But a lot of these are doing the Aldi price check, aren't they? And saying, oh, well, our prices beat Aldi because they realised they were losing a lot of custom to places like Lidl and Aldi, which are much cheaper. I personally, I think you get a better quality of meat and fruit and veg and stuff there as well. So they're doing this price check against Aldi. But what we're actually finding is those products in Sainsbury's or the big four were actually cheaper than Aldi. And what they're doing is actually increasing their price to an Aldi price. So what we've got is these big supermarkets trying to make out they're giving us a saving when actually they're boosting the prices of items so that they can say they match Aldi's or Lidl's. I don't understand it. I don't understand how you could have so much difference between two supermarkets of how much, even just for a loaf of bread. I think a loaf of bread at Aldi has gone up to 85p. It used to be 55p. You're looking at like £1.30, £1.40 for the, I call it the Tory bread. Is it Hovis or there's one of them in there? It's the Tory bread.
Warburton's.
No, that's it, the Tory bread. Because I always check out how much the Tory bread costs and that. That's something like nearly £2 in my local garage now, But if we sat there talking to these farmers and people that work on farms and they're saying, well, hang on a minute, we're not getting a pay rise here. Our pay is staying the same. We're not getting paid any extra for what we're producing. It's got to be the big supermarkets making profit for shareholders, hasn't it? That it's got to be.
Well, they had that thing where they went before the MPs and the MPs asked them questions. what the supermarkets were saying was that they make very low profits on their food, that it's sort of 3 and 4% markup only. Now, I worked in books before I went to university, and there the book retailer will have a markup of 33%. They'll add half as much again onto the price. So a profit of 4% or 3% is actually very low.
But wasn't he saying because they were trying to, from what I saw of that committee meeting as well, I think it was the head of, was it the head of Sainsbury's or head of Tesco's? I forget, it was the head, was saying, oh no, we haven't made that profit. And they were getting pulled up going, well, you have. I've got the numbers in front of me. Their profit didn't go down over lockdown, over the pandemic, and it actually went up after the pandemic. And they were saying that doesn't follow the trends of any other business. So they've got to be making a profit somewhere. You can't give your shareholders,
yes, they're making billions. I mean, and they've got caught out about petrol prices too, haven't they?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I must admit, I think supermarkets are staying ahead of the game with that, are keeping it a bit lower to the big, the Shells and the Esso garages and whatever. It's just extortionate. I don't know about your end. Mine's about £1.50 or something a litre of petrol. But again, I get it from the point of view that supermarkets are trying to give us cheaper food, which we all want. But then on the other side of that, I can see how that's driving out smaller businesses, especially like butchers and places like that, where they can't afford to keep, So how are these supermarkets keeping their prices so low when butchers can't keep it? Is it because they buy on bulk? Are they getting it at cheaper because they're buying more units of it? But even if they're doing that, they're going to get like a discount on that. Like my friend was saying, there's a potato factory near us, and Tesco buy all their potatoes from this factory. So they order so many ton or whatever each month and what have you, and the potato factory puts it out there. And he was saying that Tesco decided to do a price drop on these potatoes and do an offer on them of like 50p off or whatever. And then they actually contacted the potato factory and said, right, you need to give some of our money back for last month because we're selling these discounted. And the potato farmer had to give Tesco's a bit of a refund because Tesco's had decided to drop the price on it. So what's that all about? I've been digging about in this all afternoon and I'm still so confused of where is this money going?
Now, you see, I mean, I think you've really summed up for us the issues, because there's a huge conflict on what you're saying, because what you're saying on the one hand is that these supermarkets, the prices are so low that they're driving out the small independent retailers and they're driving their suppliers to poverty.
Yeah.
And yet at the same time, you're saying that they're making these massive profits and the prices are far too high. So, is it not just that the media are playing mind games with us and they're just saying any damn silly thing?
Well, this is what my friend from the farming community said the media are actually, their name's mud with farmers at the minute because farmers are getting fed up with being scapegoated, that somehow this is their problem, that it's greedy farmers doing this is the sort of rhetoric they're getting cross about, and they're fighting back of well, actually the prices of our tractors are going up. I mean, that's one thing that we could be looking at, how much they're paying for their tractors, and look at how much profit the people who manufacture. I had a little quick dig about, and one of the main tractor manufacturers made like 56 billion in profits last year alone. That was just for last year alone. So it's capitalism at the end of the day, isn't it? It's just trying to pin on who the capital is at this point. Who is it? It's obviously not these farmers. From what they're saying, they're not making anything, by comparing the 1950 prices to now and stuff. They're not, their prices haven't gone up. So where is this money? We're paying it at the tills and stuff. It's got to be going somewhere, hasn't it?
I think that, I think we are looking at the entire farming community, if we're not careful, going bankrupt in us, because they're trapped in the middle between massive supply price increases on one side and sort of the being held to ransom by the supermarkets to keep and sort of a big worry that.
Yeah.
Stuart, should the government hello, welcome back.
Yes,
Hi,
communist. It's the communist broadband, wasn't it?
They do this to Stuart. They're so worried about what he's going to say that they keep.
It's the
cutting him off.
spooks.
Exactly. Spooks.
It's
Yeah.
the quality of broadband provision in the place where he lives. Stuart, should the government intervene on supermarket prices? I mean, can it intervene? But sort of, should it intervene, or should they just let the market set the price?
So the government has a very suitable mechanism for tackling this, and it's called tax. And if we tax the profits of these massive multinational companies the way that they should be, we might see a different outcome. And we have to do that in a way that incentivizes them turning those profits not into dividends and extracting them out of the nation, but to paying them to workers in reducing prices. There's still massive profits for these huge companies. Like Tesco is the biggest greengrocer in the world, full stop. It's massive. That's why it can force these contracts on farmers the way that they've been doing. You'll notice if you go to Tesco every now and then, certain bread won't be on offer. That's because they'll be having a bit of a renegotiation of the contract at that time with the producer. Because they have such massive buying power, these multinational companies, they can force basically any terms that they want onto farmers, onto small and medium enterprise businesses. You can't stand up to them. The only way that we can tackle this properly is to consider that taxes are the proper mechanism. It's the ethical way to go about fixing this issue.
Absolutely.
Do they charge VAT on food, Stuart? Is VAT charged on food?
So depending on. So it's a very complicated situation. So everything from just standard taxing, biscuits are luxury items and are taxed differently to cakes.
What?
Indeed,
They're an essential item. What is that, Marvin? That it's an essential item.
A Jaffa cake is taxed differently to a biscuit. If you go into the wine aisle, the level of tax. The cheaper the bottle of wine, the higher level of tax you're paying on it per milliliter. Things like that. The quality, it really comes down to it. So if you're buying a £20 bottle of wine, the percentage of that value to tax is much lower than somebody who's buying a £4 bottle of wine. The £4 bottle of wine, and the majority of it's tax. The £20 bottle of wine, 20% of it's tax. That's the way that the system's set up, and it's difficult to navigate and it's complicated. But at the end of the day, Tesco makes billions, and there's still workers at Tesco on universal credit. They are an incredibly stable company. They have that stability even through COVID. They've had that stability through global turmoil with regards to accessing the basic resources to sell to people. They've had that stability, but they won't pass it on to workers. They rely on the stability of the British taxpayer to pick up the slack and to look after those workers. It's a staggering amount of money, and it would go so far as to protecting people in communities that are, deprived, in places that need things like, the roads repaving. There's a duty there to it, and we have to get into a position where the right thing is done one way or another.
I mean, sort of just to say, Jane Strange tweeted a while ago, Aldi and Lidl don't recognise unions at all. Neil says, you're right, a biscuit's taxed differently as it's classed as a cake. There was a big legal case about it a while ago. So I'm just going to come back at you, Stuart, because surely if you tax Tesco more, they will just pass that on to the consumer in higher prices.
We have price caps, don't we? Sorry.
No, you're right.
So that's traditionally what's happened, but they need to be called out on it. Because right now we have a capitalist system that, we have a government that's demonising people going on strike, and valuing what they have and saying that it's worth a certain price. And that's not okay, right? But Tesco do it all the time. Sainsbury's do it all the time. All these massive companies will say, look, we're putting the price up. This is what it's worth now. You're going to have to pay it. When a worker does that, it's a very different situation. That's us creating chaos.
Absolutely,
this is
right. Absolutely.
So, you can't have it both ways.
I think it's worth noting as well, because we talked about the government grants, because farmers get grants, don't they? They get grants from the EU and what have you. And we were talking through that, and the guy said, yeah, it's all great on the surface, but actually those grants, you can only use them for certain things. So one of them was like GPS systems on the tractors and stuff. You could only use your grant on that, which actually most of the farmers didn't need. And then they had to have a license to have this, which was like 750 quid a year that they had to find out of their pocket. So that's a big capitalist swizz as well, isn't it? Dressed up as a grant to help these farmers and what have you. And it's just a big swizz to get rid of the goods that they want to get rid of. That's the way I saw it anyway,
I mean, I'm just going to give a shout out for the programme Clarkson's Farm. I know Clarkson is a terrible man and we don't like Clarkson. But if you want to get an appreciation of some of the issues facing farmers nowadays, just watch Clarkson's Farm. And it's an eye-opener and it's hilarious as well. Mark, both Kirsty and Stuart have been saying the problem isn't the supermarkets. The problem isn't even necessarily the profits. The problem is capitalism, because we have a system that's predicated on profits and on capitalism and making money. Is this the case that the supermarkets have done actually nothing wrong? They're just doing what they're supposed to do in the system, and that it's the system we need to change, not the people in it.
I think that's got to be an obvious yes. I mean, it just doesn't work. They're doing what they are meant to in a capitalist society to make profit for their shareholders. That's why even the Tories were talking about capping prices on various goods. It's going to be interesting what would happen with that, because obviously then those would have to become loss leaders. But maybe we do need more caps on essential goods, like milk, cheese. I mean, I was at the shops getting some cheese about a month ago, and I noticed how this cheese I'd just started buying a year ago. It was about £2.50 back then. It's now £3.40 in Tesco, and it's like my wages haven't gone up that much. These kind of essential things we need to actually do something to try and make sure that they are actually regulated. So, but the thing is, how do we do that to keep the farmers and the people who make the cheese and things like that in profit? And well, with money to live, everybody talks about profit, but we really need to think about making a living, and that's going to be we're going to have to mark out how to actually do that, and I think that's going to be the circle we've got to square.
Ultimately, we have this supposedly wealthy economy, and we're in a situation where large numbers of people in our country can't afford to eat. And you seriously have to ask yourself, what is government doing? I'm going to come back to you, Mark, because I want to quiz you a bit more about that. But let's just look at some of the people who are turning up on the chat. Heather Swallow, hi, welcome, Heather. Yes, I met Heather today. She's come on to say hi. Mick Hills, both main parties are now committed to neoliberal economics, so nothing will change. Yeah. Absolutely. I was talking to somebody today who said she's more frightened to vote for Labour and Starmer than the Tories, because at least the Tories are incompetent and chaotic, whereas Starmer is just authoritarian and a really nasty piece of work, she said. Jacqueline, how can you change the system if you don't change the people? Interesting. Well done, Jacqueline. I suppose it needs both, doesn't it? Mark, before you go, before we finish this topic, one last thing. Is a price cap possible? You were sort of saying we need to put a price cap on, but is it actually possible? Do you not create, it's like a rent cap, you create all kinds of pressures in the system, which once you've put it in place means that if you ever, you're stuck with it, because if you ever try and let it off, you just get this huge, and the problem is 10 times as big. In a way, sort of what you're doing, if you're not careful with the price cap, is that things that are admittedly going up very quickly, but people are having time to cope with as they happen. All that you do is you lull people into a false sense of security, and then when you release the cap, you've got to deal with something that is impossible to deal with all in one go. Is it not better to support people in purchasing these things at the price they are, rather than trying to hold the price? Mark?
That would be an ideal if we support people, but I do think we have to be careful with both ways. Do we need to, because ultimately it's like what we're doing at the moment, as we've already said. Several supermarkets, their staff are on universal credit and various other benefits. So you know, are we doing the right thing? But it's just getting that balancing act right. And it's like all things, there has to be a balance in all ways. Maybe we have to, that's why I say, yeah, we should maybe look at caps, but they have to be at the right level. And that's the thing about everybody making a living rather, excuse me.
Well, I think there's a great argument for just a universal standard of living, isn't it? Where everybody at least gets enough money to feed themselves each month.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. I was just about to say, Mark's for a price cap, Stuart's for proper taxation. Kirsty, what do you say? And you've told us, making sure that people have enough money to have a basic standard of living, moving towards a kind of a universal basic income. Thank you very much for your wisdom, everybody, on that. That was really interesting, and really interesting to hear the things that you've been telling us. Last of all, Prince William has announced that he's going to have a campaign to end homelessness. And actually, people have been saying very nice things about it in the media, Stuart, it's attracted a lot of praise. I mean, tell us what the scheme is. Tell us whether you like it or not.
So my understanding of the scheme is that the new Prince of Wales is sticking £3 million into creating an organisation supporting people through the difficulties of homelessness and those people facing homelessness, with the hopes of in the future eradicating homelessness. I think they've given themselves quite a short time frame as well. With regards to that, there's 300,000 plus people in Britain right now who are effectively homeless or facing homelessness, which is a staggering amount. And I don't think it, perhaps fully reflects the difficulties that people are facing. I think it's, it's seen certainly in some parts of the media as quite a noble pursuit. Other parts of the media have said, why is another royal getting involved in politics, and they should stay out of it, and it's a political matter for governments to sort out. Now, £3 million sounds like a lot of money, but the reality is it isn't. I think
the bucket.
It's only a small fraction of the amount of money that his duchy would provide to live on. Certainly, so while it's quite noble, and I think the effort putting individuals through the process, I think it completely misses the fact that it's a much wider problem than people probably give it credit for. People don't just find themselves homeless because they've made a poor decision. There's a multitude of reasons why you can end up homeless. But some of the very basic things that people need to get back out of that situation aren't currently available to them in this climate with this government. Thing, you know, one of the ones that keeps coming up with me, and I speak to homeless people or people facing homelessness on a daily basis. The reality is the difficulties are accessing housing, social housing predominantly. It's very difficult. It's very challenging, and it's difficult and challenging when you've already got a secure home. It's and you just move in house. That's already difficult. If you don't have that security in place, people are struggling. I don't see anywhere where the Prince of Wales is calling out for a proper radical change on social housing that we need, because we have an absolute housing crisis in this nation, and we need to tackle it. We need to do a proper job on this, because it can't just be more, buy-to-let private landlords exploiting the system, creating a mechanism to shift more wealth from working people into landlords' pockets. That's not going to fix homelessness, and it shouldn't be seen as the fix. We need to create a system that actually guarantees, that there's homes available when people need them, when they want them. We need a mechanism and support, because people are finding themselves at the end of relationships, family breakdowns, people are losing jobs, and we need mechanisms in place to support them through that. Right now, it's difficult to speak to, mental health professionals. Part of the reason people end up homeless and predominantly end up roofless is because that they needed that early intervention with regards to mental health issues, with regards to, medical issues, and that's not happening.
Financial issues as well.
Exactly. There's so little support available to these people. It feels
So I talked to a lot of people who were unemployed when there was a problem with unemployment, and they were just sick of going on confidence building skills and sort of there are other issues that are sort of, and we covered these up with these pretend schemes that somehow if you just have more confidence, or if you have various skills, then you'll just walk into the job, you'll just walk into a home. I absolutely approve. I had something to say to you. Yes. We managed to eradicate homelessness during the COVID crisis pretty damn quick. What made the difference, Stuart, then?
Money. Political will to spend money to tackle a problem. That's what was required, and that's what happened. It was very successful. We got people were put into accommodation one way or another. It was perhaps, there's no perfect situation for somebody. It's a transitional period for many people in their lives, but certainly with regards to their housing situation, it is often transitional before you get somebody fully sorted. We recognized the problem. We got people into, sheltered accommodation, temporary accommodation, that middle ground, and we could have got all those people into full proper accommodation if there was the political will to take it on board. We could have fixed it there and then. And there was not enough will in government to solve it. We could have already fixed this. We won't need the Prince of Wales to come and be a hero and fix this problem. We could have already done it once, and we can do it again.
Just before you go, Stuart, there was a question here. I think it was Jacqueline Hemmings who said that 300,000 doesn't sound enough. And are the is that everybody, including people like sofa surfers and all, not, is this just rough sleepers, or is this sofa surfers and people being put into hotels and all that hidden homelessness?
So this figure comes from the Ministry for Housing, Local Government and Communities. It is everybody who reports as being homeless, roofless, or threatened with homelessness within the next 56 days. That is everybody in that figure. So that's people living legitimately with no roof on the streets, you know, in a town centre, to people in 56 days to being handed a notice by their landlord saying, I'm selling the house, I can't afford the mortgage anymore, you need to make other arrangements. It's everybody in that gap. And I mean, it doesn't sound like enough, but 300,000 people is a lot of people. And I do believe it's probably more. And people aren't identifying. There's a huge stigma around homelessness. They don't want to accept that they need help. Lots of people will shield and hide the fact that they need the support and won't identify, you know, because it means going to a council and being very honest, and it can be emotive and difficult for these people. They're not going to do it. They'd rather struggle on and not get the help.
And there's not the accommodation for them when they all that. I will point out as well, everybody, that 300,000 people, £3 million is £10 a person. So if he solves homelessness on £10 a person, I reckon we just forget the political parties and put him in charge of everything. I mean, it's clearly living. Mark, I'm not in a position to question William's motives. I think that his motives are probably fine. But objectively, do you not find it sickening to see a man who has multiple policies leading this campaign for people who have no home at all?
About it, he, as well as being the Prince of Wales, he also has inherited the Duchy of Cornwall, but also, and that is valued at £652 million. The Duchy, just the estate, and that is 50 is farmland and what have you. But
I can hear
you all right, but unfortunately it's everybody else is this. We'll come back to you, Mark. Steve, Kirsty, last question to you. Sort of, what do you think we have to do if we're going to eliminate homelessness? What do you think? What do we need to do?
It's far too simplistic just to say that we need houses and people for these to go. We need a huge investment in our infrastructures that are there to support people. So if you work with homeless people, you know there is a lot of drug addictions, there is a lot of alcohol addictions, there's a lot of mental health, there is a lot of trauma, unresolved trauma. Some of the stories these guys will tell you will, you know, send me air white if it wasn't white. And without that, you know, I wrote a poem about this. When you were talking, it was just making me think of this, about somebody that I was supporting. I wrote a poem about them, and it was basically they were addicted, so they weren't allowed to go to the homeless shelter because they weren't allowed to have an addiction or be using alcohol to access the shelter. So that was completely out of, and they had to spend time in the shelter before they could get on the council housing list. So that's how it works our end, is you've got to be in a shelter for so long before you can get onto the council list. So we couldn't get them into the shelter because they've got this addiction, and then trying to get them on the council list, they weren't allowed on the council list because they had an addiction as well. And the council weren't happy about taking people who had got an addiction. So then you go to the NHS and you're asking them for help with addiction, and they're saying, well, we'll put you on the waiting list. So they're waiting for that. Then we've got things like RN's got something called Add Action, which apparently the waiting list just to be seen on that to tackle addiction in itself. So it's not just giving somebody a house and going, there you go, I've resolved homelessness here. Because what you'll find is actually a lot of them, once they get housed, they'll be back on the streets again in 6 months, because they've not been able to cope in the accommodation that they've been put in as well. This is the other thing. If it's all great about multi-lets and what have you, and it's great for landlords and stuff, however, what you find with homeless people is you throw them all into one house together. You've got different personalities and different problems going on there. And a lot of people, like Stuart was saying, just won't even access that first shelter, how to get them so that they're on the council list and they can be permanently housed. So, yeah, it's a load of faff. It's a media thing.
Thank you so much indeed. And believe it or not, our time is up. The comment of the night is Jacqueline Hemmings. I don't drink or take drugs, but after living in this hotel for 2 weeks, I'm seriously tempted. And that is a really important comment, because one thing we haven't addressed is that the pressures of homelessness embed the problems which caused the homelessness, and sort of it's a long way out. Jane Strange, this is exhausting. All our public services have been decimated. It feels there's nowhere left to turn, and it's very easy to despair, Jane. Okay, everybody, time is up. My golly. One, thank you for bearing with us through this time where we're struggling with all kinds of technical problems, and so the hang in there. We'll get them sorted, I'm sure. At the end of the day, this is a voice that needs to go out there. Socialist Think Tank is a voice of socialism, however chaotic our tech might be, that needs to go out into the country, that people hear that there is a different way. We do not need to go down the capitalist road. We can turn around and begin heading the other way. And there lies the answer to many of the problems that we deal with on this. So please join Socialist Think Tank on Facebook and sort of buy the merchandise if you can. Check out some other of those socialist media outlets such as Milk the Cow podcast and Not the Andrew Marr Show and things like that. Sort of let's get our voices heard. Thank you to my guests tonight. Thank you, Mark, for running the tech. Thank you very much for all you've done. Absolutely vital. You really appreciated and loved. Kirsty, always. My golly, what you told us about farmers was interesting tonight, and thank you for researching the topics. Thank you for knowing what you were talking about. It was really interesting to listen to you. And Stuart, it is another man who knows what he's talking about. God bless you for your comments, and it's just so good to have you back. This is not just a one-off and we're going to lose you. We're going to
No, I'm going to try and be on more regularly.
Thank you so much. This is so good. And most of all, listeners, thank you to you. Thank you for your faithfulness. You make the show. Thank you for your comments. And now I'm going to hand over to Mark, hopefully, who will set the jingles going, and we'll just say bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye.